notwithstanding the distance.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
absolutely.
Great. Well, we do have a number that have joined us already, and it's now 1:32. So I think, Lara, if you're agreeable, we'll maybe get started. There may be folks that will dial in. We really appreciate everyone making time to be with us today, and we're very, very excited about today's session. I'm really delighted to introduce, for those of you who don't know her, Lara McCulloch. She is a renowned subject matter expert on brand strategy, and she's been a terrific champion of the Chamber and has agreed to spend some time with our membership today sharing her insights. For those of you that haven't met Lara, I can tell you that she positively lit up the room at our recent Wonder Women in Leadership conference that we held during the first week of March. It feels like a very long time ago, but only a short number of weeks ago. And she absolutely, as I mentioned, she lit up the room and she left that audience feeling so empowered and so inspired to take their businesses and their leadership to the next level. So we wanted to bring her wisdom back to our membership based on popular demand. Lara is, I think it goes without saying, a master at what she does at any time, but particularly in response to the global pandemic that we've all been dealing with. We felt that our community would now more than ever benefit from her insight, as so many are looking to adapt or pivot their businesses in order to set themselves up for recovery and success in both the near and longer terms. And Lara is, well, she describes herself as a chief shift disturber. She's certainly an award-winning, results-driven brand positioning expert who has established a tremendous reputation and credibility over the last 25 years. She truly is an expert at teaching business owners how to become the only one in their industry instead of being one of many. And she's had experience advising some very large multinational firms like Johnson & Johnson, Kraft, Unilever, Shell, Benjamin Moore, and she also works with countless other smaller businesses around the globe. So she travels extensively. She's a sought after keynote speaker and workshop facilitator, and she's the recipient of numerous very distinguished awards, including Connect Magazine's Top 40 Under 40. And she's also been invited to participate on CNBC as a brand expert. So she has an incredible background and depth and range of experience. She's also a graduate from the Ivy Business School's Executive Leadership Program. And one of the things that I love about Lara is that the title that brings her the greatest pride is being a mom. And some of us have had the pleasure of meeting her delightful son. And when she's not building Lego with him or homeschooling or doing other wonderful things, she's also quite fearless. And you may be interested to note that she's camped in minus 10-degree weather beside a glacier. She's bungee jumped over a rainforest. She swims with sharks, and she's also jumped out of a plane at 15,000 feet. So whenever I think of Lara, two words immediately spring to mind, and that is fierce and fabulous. So Lara, I just want to thank you so much for joining our membership today and for all of the work that you've done to support the Burlington Chamber. We're truly grateful to you. And so without further ado, I'd really like to turn it over to you to take us through today's session. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful introduction, and it's my honor to be chatting with all of you today. Can you give me a little bit of a thumbs up if you can hear me well? Yeah, awesome. So this kind of reinforces something that we saw in the slide that was up when everybody kind of came into the room, which is it would be really helpful if you haven't already to engage your video. I don't care what you look like. You could be in pajamas, you could have your hair in pigtails, doesn't matter. The reason why I love video is some level of engagement. When I'm standing up on a stage, it's really easy for me to see people, see if they're getting things, nodding their heads or furrowing their brows. It's a lot easier for me. Plus, I'm going to be asking for a little bit of engagement today. So I will be asking you to write some things in the chat bar. Familiar where a chat is, There is an area at the bottom of your screen where you can turn on your chat so you can see the chat area and you can actually enter things in there. Also, if you stick around to the end, I have a really special gift for you, which is specifically just for the Burlington Chamber. So really cool if you can stick around. So here's the reality. Where we are today in our homes, sitting in front of our computers, was not your plan. And I get it. You very likely had other goals and dreams that you worked toward, and then out of COVID-19 hit. And all of those plans are very likely out the window. But the good news is that just by being here, you're not giving up, and you are a leader within your organization. And one way of looking at this, and I am not downplaying the severity of the health issue here, but one way of looking at this is you may just have been called to the greatest adventure of your life and your business. This is really an opportunity to pause and stop working in your working on it. It's an opportunity to finally get out of your comfort zone if you were there before. It's an opportunity to do the things that maybe you always wanted to do but didn't have the time, or maybe you were just too comfortable to do them. Because in many ways, no matter how seasoned of a business owner you are or how successful your business is, we're all in a position right now where we're starting to some degree fresh. So we are at the pinnacle point in history and the life cycle of our brands and companies, because the decisions that you are making right now today are going to have a profound impact on how you show up in the months and years to come in your business. The decisions you're making right now. So in times of crisis, I'm actually going to do something a little different with you. Normally when I'm standing up on a stage, I'm sharing some really cool visual graphics behind me. I'm actually going to be sharing my screen here, which is from my iPad. So bear with me 1 second. And let's just make sure this works. So if you can give me a thumbs up that you can right now see my iPad screen. Is that a yes? No? Can you see my iPad screen? Oh, there we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's loading.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Good. So I'm going to do a little bit of drawing with you. I have a broken wrist, so be really kind if my drawings are not tremendously fabulous. Don't rate me on my drawings, rate me on my ideas if that sounds fair. So in time, we really see three types of leaders. We see leaders who react. We see leaders who retract. And we see leaders who resolve. Okay, so let's talk about the reactors. The reactors, this is actually usually our first instinct when something happens. We react to that thing. So reactors right now are usually cutting their expenses. They're making a lot of rash decisions. They're focused on what's happening right now at this very moment without really thinking about the implications longer term. So you say these type mode, whereas the retractors are quite different. Now, if we think about the reactors before I move on, imagine for a second that Netflix, which before our last recession in 2008 was a mail order DVD company. Imagine if they had simply cut their costs when 1,000 of their users disappeared in 2008. They didn't react. They actually pivoted. They recognized where the industry was going and they became a streaming service. And they've totally transformed the way that we consume content through our televisions and our computers. We'll see what happens in this downturn, but really important to note that they did not react, actually resolved. So the retractor now are the people who are going quiet. They are afraid to say or do any, are really in many ways waiting for things to get back to normal. So we refer to this as an apathy mode. And then we have the resolvers. The resolvers are people who operational efficiencies right now, but they're focused on future winning. They're on the offensive. They see this as a time for growth, much like Apple. So if Apple had just sat and waited out last recession, pivoting from a product company to a service company, we wouldn't have today know Apple streaming and have subscriptions to music, experience growth when most people were experiencing a decline in the last downturn. So it's really important to recognize that the way that we react right now has a profound impact on our businesses. So the resolver too is being in strategic mode. So here's where I want you to use your chat bar if possible. I want to really know from you, where do you see yourself? Are you a reactor? Are you a reactor? Are you a result right now? All right, let's see some of those comments coming in. So we've got resolver, retract, and resolve. Good. Resolver, resolver. Ooh, I like it. Part reaction, part resolving. Good. Normally react, but working to move to resolve. Excellent. Resolver. Wonderful. So let's talk about what those three different types of leaders look like right now. If we look at this situation, where on the left here we've got growth of the business, at the bottom we have time. Reactors look a little something like this over time. And this is actually based on research. So Harvard Business Review did a study. They took a look at about 4,700 companies, and they analyzed their performance over the past 3 global events to try and figure out who really fared the best coming out of really tough times. So the people who are panicking, the people who are focused on the now, to out of these 3 groups. The retractors tend to look a little something like this. Their business kind of dips and then it might go up and it might dip again. They tend to come out the same or slightly worse off than they did before the downturn. And then you have the resolvers. Many of you are. They tend to look a little something like this over time. So what's interesting to note is right now we are very early in terms of time. You know, this is very, very early days. And right now, all 3 different tenders and their businesses look very similar. But over time, many make it through the however long this lasts. Some will come out better than ever, and others down the road will be generally in the same place or maybe slightly worse off than where they were. So the reality is that for many business owners, any type of business owner you talk to who's been through troubled times before will say that this is not going to last. No one knows how long this situation is going to last, but we will be out of it. And the big question is, what is your business going to look like when we are on the other side? Where is your business going to be more years down the road? Now, if you're going to take one thing away from our time together today, what I really want you to think about, I want you to see this pandemic, the closure of businesses, the disappearance of industries as the great reset, because it is a time to rethink everything that you thought you knew about business or the way that you were operating just a few months ago. We now have the ability to this as an opportunity, fear and panic. So what I'm most interested in today is focusing on this trajectory here on the green line. And I'm really interested in taking who are currently heading down the orange way and moving them up to the green line. And of course, taking the people who are on the red line up to the green line. That's really where I want to focus today. I don't want to focus it on what is your business going to look like in a week from now. I want to talk about how are we going to weather this and come out better than we were before we got into this. So I'm going to explain why different strategies right now. I'm also going to explain to you how to get to the heart of why people will buy and not buy in the coming months and years. I want to talk about the number one thing that you need to do right now to course correct your business and to make sure that you are going to be on that green trajectory line. And I also want to talk about how to know if you're at risk of being cut from your customers' expenses if we head into a recession. Now, I'm a little distracted because I actually hear crying coming from my son's bedroom right now, and I'm a little concerned, but I'm going to keep, give me 1 second just to make sure that there isn't a fire or something going on. Anderson? Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So welcome to the time of the global pandemic where we're also homeschooling and trying to do business at the same time. Thank you all for being patient with me. So the reality is I know that we have a good mix of different types of companies on our call today. Some of you, if we look at the types of companies as 4 potential types of companies, some of you are a necessity. Great place to be. There's a lot of businesses right now who are doing really well in this time. Business as usual, like grocery stores, food delivery services, video communication services, remote working software, cybersecurity, all of these things that are helping us function in the times that we're in right now. So your business, if you're in a quadrant, you may be operating as normal or even thriving. Your biggest problem right now is awareness. So people have a pain, and if they don't know you exist, they don't know that you can solve that pain for them. So your focus needs to be on generating awareness. For some of you, you are an indulgence. And what that means, you might be a consultant or maybe a web designer, for example. So you offer a service that's justifiable. I need it for my business. Great. But maybe expecting clients who are calling you in a panic saying that they need to cut their spending. And so really what you're focused on is quelling that panic, right? So you might have clients who are on that red trajectory. They're cutting everything. So you have to quell that panic. And more importantly, you need to show them that you are not an expense, but rather an investment. And so your focus is on generating wins for your client. In other words, showing them that whatever they're paying you, you're able to make them more. So in this particular instance, you might have clients who have pains, one of them being money, and they can get a solution to their pains, but to also generate income from the expense that they're paying with you. Why the focus is on wins. Some of you are misaligned with what's happening right now. So I have a number of clients who are in the event industry. Their livelihood is made off of us meeting with one another face to face, but that's not happening anymore. So like them, you may need to evolve or pivot your brand to adapt to escape or emerging consumer. So your focus here is on having a pain pivot, a pain solution pivot. Right? So what you need to really think about is where is the pain moving to and how are you going to move your solution to move with the pain? So in the instance of the event planner, them are moving from face-to-face events to now creating virtual events and building expertise in building these virtual events. So your consumer, if you fit in the quadrant, has a pain that's shifted, and there may be nobody right now that's currently answering these new needs. And then the last quadrant we have are people whose businesses are irrelevant. Now, the reality is that right now these businesses haven't necessarily become apparent yet. It's a little too soon to tell who is going to be irrelevant as the consumer and the market shifts. But just like VHS and beta, there will be innovations that will put pasture. And this is what this type of time creates. It creates innovation. So you may very soon have to rethink what you're doing or what you're offering. And really your focus is on a biz model. So there are people who are out there who have pains that aren't being served, and your job will be, if you're irrelevant, to find the opportunities that exist out there that really meet what you're great at or what you enjoy doing. So I want once again to head to the chat bar, and I want to hear from you as to which quadrant you think you are in. And while you're doing that, I am just going to mute myself for a second and just deal with this challenge. All right, so we've got some indulgence, oneness, misalignments. Okay, great. So it's really important to understand where your business sits here, because the way that you address the needs of the market totally changes. Now, if you were paying attention to what I was saying, you would have heard me say over and over and over again. Did anyone catch what that word was? Feel free to yell it out or put it in the chat bar. Answer is pain. Awesome. We got a job. Yeah, I mentioned the word pain over and over again. Friction points or pain are the absolute base foundation, great business models, and great brand positioning. And when it comes to friction, what we need to understand is what's new. So what are the new pains and what's static? So there are two very, very distinct types of pains here. Both have incredible relevance to you and your business. So talk about what's new. So I remember this was probably a couple of years ago. I was at mastermind events. We were this one evening going to have a surprise who's going to be to us. No idea who it was until that very night. We sat down in the room and we learned that we were going to be sitting face to face with a gentleman by the name of Gordon. And if you don't know who Shep is, there's a really fantastic Netflix program about him called Supermensch. For those of you who do know, you know he is the talent manager behind some pretty impressive names like Elvis and Blondie, Pink Floyd, Alice Cooper. And he was also behind creating Celebrity Chef, right? So prior to the Celebrity Chef movement, we had never heard of names like Emeril Lagasse, Wolfgang Puck. He created these people into icons and household names. So listening to him was utterly fascinating. I literally sat on the edge of my seat for hours listening to him talk. And at the end of his talk, we went into Q&A, and there was somebody who asked this really great question, which was, across the board with all of the artists that you've ever worked with, all of these, celebrities, what was the key to success? What was the one reason that created these people into icons? And what stayed with me ever since, he kind of paused and he said, I found the start of a wave and I rode it. So what he meant by that is his job, as he saw it, was to understand what consumers were ready for before they even knew that they were ready for it. And then he found he packaged that art that delivered that thing, whatever consumers were waiting for. And I'll give you a really kind of funny example of this. He was telling a story about Alice Cooper, who he's worked with for probably 30 years, and he's never had a contract with this guy. This was when he first started working with Alice Cooper. This was at a time when the Beatles had come, and all of a sudden there was between what parents were listening to and what kids were listening to. Then the Rolling Stones came, and that disparity grew. And he saw the start of a wave. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to create the band the parents hated, to allow kids to create a rebellion through music. And that's what Alice Cooper became. And he told this story about, he had booked Alice Cooper band in this bar, and there was probably 2 or 3 people in the audience. And he instructed the band to wear these that were totally see, which in those times, well, even in today's times, would have been very, very lewd and lascivious. While the band was playing, he ran outside, went to a payphone, and called the police and said, "Hey, you better come here quick. We've got a band who's, nude." And the police came, but unfortunately, by the time they came, the bar was so hot and the band was so sweaty that they had fogged up their outfits, and it was no longer see-through. So his plan was foiled. But really, what he was doing, he had found this wave that was starting with people in the way that they music, and he built a band around. So I want you to really ask yourself, what is the start of wave in your industry? What is changing or is poised to change? Now, if I give you an example, I have a client right now who plans events. Her expertise is generating revenue around events. That's kind of her positioning in the marketplace, mainly through sponsorship. And as you can imagine, 5 or 6 weeks ago, her world changed. Events were canceled across the board. So we looked into what was changing and will change on the other side of COVID-19. The reality is many events are moving to virtual. And although we have a desire to meet face-to-face once we're able to, we're probably going to see the resurgence of face-to-face events, but there will also be a fundamental shift of more virtual events and hybrid events where we're kind of combining virtual events and face-to-face events together. So the biggest pains for virtual events is either a need for a different kind of sponsorship, since traditional sponsorship won't work anymore, right? You don't have to display banners, you can't meet people face-to-face and shake hands. So sponsorship itself has to change. Virtual events are totally free. So sponsorship is a way for those events to generate revenue. And so many virtual events planners who have gotten into virtual events without any type of event background. So they don't even know that sponsorship is an option, let alone how to secure sponsors. On the sponsor side, the big pains are that now sponsors who were used as a major marketing channel don't have this opportunity to get in front of their prospective customers anymore. They may be aware of virtual events, but they don't know how to leverage them. And they certainly don't have an understanding of what virtual events exist that they can get their brand in front of. So based on those pains, she's pivoting her business to be the matchmaker between church and their sponsors. She sponsors find events to their money at, ensure proper visibility, and she helps the virtual event host generate revenue streams that they otherwise wouldn't have. So that's one example of how we can use what is new to dictate how we our business now and into the future. Does that make sense? Thumbs up. Nodding heads work too. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. Now, on the other hand, we've got what's status, not actually changing. So Jeff Bezos was recently quoted as saying in frustration that one of the biggest things that people ask him all the time is, what's next? What's going to change over the next 10 years? And as he says, he's far more interested in what's not going to change in 10 years, because you can build a business strategy around things that are stable in time, right? Anti-wave. Let's see here. I wish my drawing skills were much faster. So this is the anti-wave. What's not going to change? So I want you to ask yourself, you look at your industry and the consumers, what is not going to change? What is going to stay constant regardless of whether the market goes up, down, or how time evolves? So one of the people, and I don't know if they're on the call right now, and unfortunately I can't see the whole list of people, but one of the people who filled out the survey before this event works for a retirement home. And one of the things that they said was there's a lot of stigma right now that these homes are unsafe places in COVID-19. We've seen the images of, you know, the elderly in lockdown and family members unable to visit, and we've heard the stories of, you know, COVID being rampant within these homes. So that's the challenge that they're dealing with right now. But if we go back to, you know, what is going to stay constant, the bottom line is that these homes are a necessity, because what's not going to change is that people aren't all of a sudden after COVID-19, children are not going to be in a position to be able to take their aging. Constant is the need for a care and of comfort and security for the elderly. But when people aren't buying what you're selling right now, the big question is, what do you do? And I know many of you that are listening right now are in this position. What do I do? Nobody can buy what it is that I'm selling. More importantly, you'll be asked, how do you prepare people to buy when that fear diminishes and goes down? Because we know, as I said at the top of this, this is not here to stay. This is a blip in time over the course of your brand and your company. So how do we make sure that people buy from you when that fear diminishes? So I want you to look right now as this opportunity you to build trust and an emotional connection with your prospective customers. Like, we have never had such an opportunity to do this. So think about the friction points for your market right now. You have the elderly feeling isolated. They can't leave their homes. Many don't know how technology, and technology is what's keeping us sane in many regards. It's the ability for us to communicate and connect with one another. If you don't have that, you have four walls and silence. The problem is they don't really know how to use this technology. Many elderly people don't know how to use the technology. And then children of the elderly, who are probably the decision makers for a retirement home, you have them feeling helpless because they can't visit their parents. There's a burden of care on them right now. So while they're dealing with business closures, homeschooling their children, feeling isolated themselves, they're also making sure that they're caring for their parents. So the big question is, how can you be a hero to them right now so that when the immediate pains are gone, you've built a relationship of trust? So I'm just throwing out ideas. Maybe you can partner with a technology company to get iPads in the homes of the elderly in need in your area. You could have the technology company sponsor. You could do a crowdfunding campaign. You could hold a virtual fundraising event. You could offer lessons to the elderly to use Zoom. You could offer help to the children with food pickup and delivery using your built-in food distribution channels. You could offer exercise lessons for the elderly facility into their home once they know how to have the tech set up. You could start a coalition with other companies in your area and offer them one-stop services. The is with the ideas right now. Like, again, we've never had incredible opportunity before to be able to help people to the degree that we can help them right now. Now, before I move on, I want to ask you, I want to ask you guys to share in the session, what idea or thought or statement so far has stood out the most to you? So please leave that in the chat bar. It just helps me understand what's resonating with you right now. We need some like really great music, some good hold music. Okay, so what are the friction points? Awesome. So that's a big takeaway for you, Meg. Great to hear. Jeopardy. Yes, we need a Jeopardy theme song to play while people are typing in the chat bar. Awesome. So we have been looking for new opportunity to look for static, right? So awesome. So a lot of times that we're constantly thinking about what's new. I think it's a great shift to think about what's not going to change. Great. Looking for opportunities to connect, build relationships with clients, identifying new pain points. Awesome. I think it's a walk and chew gum approach that's needed. Keep doing what's working, but pivot to what's new. Okay, build. Awesome. Feedback, all very much. Now, draw for you, amaze you with my incredible draw skills. And that was a joke. Simply addressing pains is not enough. There's something very important that sets a leader who's resolving apart from one who's panicking. And I'm going to illustrate this point quite literally for you. So if anybody can guess, chat bar, what I am drawing for you, there is no prize. You just get profound respect from me and possibly a thumbs up. But yep. Geneviève, you were totally correct. It is an iceberg. Wonderful. Real. That's awesome. It's also true, but not accurate. Okay, so it is an iceberg. And the reason why I'm sharing an iceberg with you is when I explain what I do to people, I say I'm a brand strategist. Most often what I'm met with is, oh, you design logo website. So I think it's really important before we move on to the next section and I talk about what things you need to do, that we have a clear understanding of what is and is not, or the different types of branding. So the reason why I've used the analogy of the iceberg is because with an iceberg, you only see about 10% of the iceberg. About 90% of its mass is located underwater. The same can be said about branding. So in terms of what we see, one form of branding is something called brand identity. Brand identity is quite literally how people identify your brand. It's based on what they see, your logos, colors, icons, all of the visual things the consumer would see. The other thing people see is brand marketing. So, and marketing is how you promote your brand to your consumers. Now, there's the mass that underneath the water that people really don't see. All this here. This is brand strategy. So brand strategy is made up of a whole bunch of different beliefs. It's your positioning. It's your values. It's personality, right? There's a whole bunch of different elements that make up your brand strategy. The way that you think about your brand before you do anything else, because the sum of all of these things is how people see you, how your consumers see you, and feel about you, which is brand perception. And real opportunity to alter people's about our brand. And logo isn't going to do it right now. Your marketing can certainly contribute depending on how you do it. Big thing is your brand. Without a strategy is just something pretty. It's a piece of design, right? A lot of people do this. I like that font, I like color, let's go with it. But it doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning behind the logo. Marketing without strategy is just content. And that's one thing we don't need more of right now. Somebody brand strategy is a nice gesture. What we've been doing is changing people's perceptions of us, and that's the strategy. So let's talk about the important thing on iceberg strategy for a second. If you came to the Wonder Woman event, you've been introduced to this concept already. This is a thing that I call Domination Mountain. And the idea here is that in business, you have three strategic choices when you're developing your brand, okay? They're the platform strategic choices. These are the absolute base things that you need to be thinking about or creating. So the first choice you have is you can be a noise leader. What that is you spend more than anybody else in your industry on advertising to build awareness, right? Because the businesses we see all the time, we hear all the time, they tend to register with us in our minds. We remember them. We think about them whenever we think about that thing we want to buy. Now, this is a really, but it tends to be a strategy adopted by large companies because you have to spend more than anybody else in your industry. We also recognize that this strategy can get more and more expensive over time. As competitors come into the marketplace, as a competitor tries to steal your position, you have to spend more to maintain your position. So this can be really, really difficult for small businesses. Second choice you have is to be the low price leader. What that means, just as it sounds, your prices are lower than anybody else in your industry. Right? And I mean that systematically across the board. So there's many big and well-known companies that adopt this strategy, Walmart, Dollar Store, Costco. We offer this as a race because what happens, especially in times like this where they go down, people want to make a position, high relevant consumers right now, and that may be under pricing. Well, it's probably going to impact your profit margins, which are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So this can be a really tough position to maintain, but it can be good if built in the right distribution channels, the right partnerships, etc. So before I move on to the third choice you have, I want to ask you to write into the chat bar if you are the noise leader, just write noise leader, the low price leader, write low price leader. And what we will very likely see is very few comments at all in the chat bar because there can only be one noise leader and one low price leader in any particular industry. So we've got one person trying to be both, and then the other person who said neither. Neither. Okay, awesome. So for anybody who didn't, virtually put up your hand or write into the chat box, your third and only other choice. The only other choice you have is to have a disruptive cure. What I mean by that is you have created a solution to an untapped need for a very defined audience. Yeah, certainly not in a low price leader. That just by nature of doing that is creating a form of disruption in your industry. And this is to note because a lot of people, when they hear the word disruption, think about something revolutionary that often comes on the end of investing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into R&D or technology. Disruption can come just by the way that you position your brand and how you communicate it. And we can talk about that in Q&A. You have a disruptive cure. In fact, most small business owners I talk to, they're disruptive. Thank you very much for validating my position. I want you to ask, if you did not exist, would your customers' demand be met by somebody else at the same or better price or the same or better service? And I want you to be honest. Oftentimes think that our service is far better than our competitors. Most businesses, that they're different. In fact, Bain Research did a study on this, and they found that 80% of their brands were highly differentiated in their marketplace. marketplace. And that sounds amazing. The problem was that only 8% of their customers agreed. So these types of companies tend to use words like, whoops, didn't mean to do that. To use words like more and better. More and better. So all those words do. So let's give an example of this. Like, we have more offices than anybody else in the world. We've won more awards than anybody else. We are better at customer service. We're better at this. All these words do is they tether you to your competition, and they differentiate you on degrees. So what you become is a slightly better version of somebody else. Or in most cases, you think you're better, but your customers think you're exactly the same, only maybe more expensive. So these businesses are what fall into Domination Mountain, into an area I call the Land of Ambiguity. All right, so I'm going to try and make this look as murky and horrible as possible. But basically, this is not a very good place to be. It is not a strategic choice. It's a default by not choosing one of your 3 strategic choices. So here's what the Land of Ambiguity looked like before COVID-19. You might have heard things like, you're too expensive. You might be losing out to competitors who are lower priced, or you might have to lower your prices to win. You might have spent money on marketing that just didn't seem to work. You weren't getting the leads that you were looking for. Not having a great answer to the question, why you? Or even staff have a totally different answer depending on which staff member you ask to that very question, why you? What makes you different in the market? And the list goes on. Businesses in the Land of Ambiguity survive in good times. They do okay. But in times like this, being in the Land of Ambiguity is really scary. And here's why. When it comes to assessing what exactly we're going to be moving forward with in terms of our expenses and assessing what we're going to be, generally look, oops, actually, let me do this. Basic. So on the left-hand side, things that we can rationalize. And at the bottom, we have things that are easy to rationalize and hard to rationalize. And down here, I have impact if I cut. And the impact is high. It will have a big impact on me if I cut this versus low. All right, so what do these quadrants look like? Very similar to what I showed you at the top of the thing. We have these ones right here are necessities. So necessities are basically critical for survival. What's important to note is that what you would deem a necessity versus what I deem a necessity might be very, okay? So one of the things I go through in my group coaching program are the 4 different types of consumers that we're going to see in a down economy. They're going to categorize their expenses in different quadrants depending on where they are in their own stage. But necessities for survival. So right now in this climate, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, soap, these are all things that we deem as necessities. Then we've got pleasures. These things are what I would refer to as a justifiable indulgence. So it's something we need, sure, like we justify that we need it, but do we really need it? So for me, for example, a pleasure or a justifiable indulgence is, my Peloton. Do I need it to survive? But if I'm not on my Peloton every night, the rationalization I give myself is I will be a worse mother and a worse business owner, right? So there are certain things in business and in life that we see as a pleasure. Then up here, something that's harder to justify, but has a big impact is luxuries. So these are things that can be paused. And then we have excess. Things that are easy to cut. So guess where brands that are in the land of ambiguity fall? Where do you think? Excess. Beautiful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Where they fall is in excess. They are easy to cut. So noise leaders will be paying less money in this climate because advertising, a lot of people pull their advertising. They can get a lot louder for a lot less money. So they are actually pumping up their volume right now. Cost leaders become very valuable in a down economy, and disruptive cures solve a problem that nobody else can, so they become justifiable. But those who fall in the land of ambiguity will either have someone cheaper, more well-known, or someone more relevant. And that is not a good place to be when the pie is shrinking. So you become an expert that can easily be cut. So for most of you on the call right now, most of you, not all of you, but most, you need to cure. So what I want you to be thinking about, we can't get into the true framework, but I'm gonna give you 3 tips here. The 3 things you need to be thinking about, or the 3 things that a disruptive cure needs to answer is, first of all, who is your micro niche? What I refer to as a micro niche is the narrowest possible audience with a shared set of beliefs, values, pain, dreams, and obstacles, right? So who are you paying for? Is the who. The second thing you need to be thinking about are their triggers, right? Those were the pains that we talked about. So what are the friction points that you can solve for them that are currently untapped in the marketplace right now? So that's where we're looking at the things that are the pains that are new, as well as the static pains. These are the things that will motivate your micro niche to take action with you. So these are the what. And then lastly, we have what I call the anti-narrative. And what that means is inside of every industry, there are narratives that exist. These are the norms of what your industry believes or how they operate. Great brands deliver an anti-narrative that zigs when everybody else is zagging. So I'm going to give you an example of exactly what I mean there, but this is the why, right? This is the why people should believe in my business versus somebody else's business. I have a client who's an audiovisual company. They're in the States. They basically provide lighting and sound for very large events. The problem with many AV companies is they're known as equipment providers or equipment renters. And so there's very little difference between one AV company and another AV company. So they tend to hang their hat on service as a differentiator. But as we know, these companies tend to fall in the land of customers think they're basically the same, and so they will pay the lowest possible price. The pain is pretty consistent. I need quality lighting and sound for my event. I've a chance to get it right. There are no do-overs. Supplier that I can manage my sound and lighting with no mistakes, or at least if there are mistakes, I don't know about them. So the solution is an AV company with great service, one of many, right? But our objective is to be the only one. So with this particular client, I spoke with him to understand who, right? Who's the micro niche? And what we identified here is that his micro niche were association planners. So an association is very similar to the Burlington chain. An association for professionals with large events greater than 500 people. That's their. So then we talked about what are the triggers. What's important is to really think about the general triggers. What are the general friction points? Association planners are under immense pressure to keep their members engaged and receiving value. They are usually very understaffed, and usually their focus is on the event, the major event, whether all from around the world to this event requires a year of planning, but it only takes place 3 days. So how do you engage your members the other 362 days of the year, right? So we had understaffed, need for were the triggers. So then we got to the why, the anti-narrative. The narrative in the audiovisual industry is we provide great audiovisual products and we offer incredible. That's the narrative that is common. The anti-narrative was we are not writers, we are content producers. So what my client did is in that event that took place, they captured interviews with some of the key speakers, interviews with attendees. They were looking for snippets of content that they could create that came from this one event where they already had their equipment. And they created something called Social 365, where they created an easy button for association planners. They took all of that content, they created social media posts for 365 a year. They auto-populated that content. They gave it over to the association planner, and the association planner now had an easy button to create content 365 days of the year instead of 3 days of the year. So that was a way to shift them outside of being seen as just another renter of equipment to being a content producer. So I want you to focus on the anti-narrative as well as the who and the what. And this is moving you from being one of many to the only one. And it's going to be the difference from you being forgotten in a few months from now to being remembered. And I started this off by saying the decisions you make right now can set your business up to thrive in the future. And I also challenged you to think about, before we end our call today, whether this is going to be the worst or the best time in your company's history. So now's your choice. And I'm actually going to make this easier for you. Before we get into Q&A, I want to share with you else. Let's see how I can do this. My goal is to move 10,000 businesses from the land of ambiguity to having a disruptive cure. My screen with you. So let's see here. All right, so yeah, so my goal is really to move businesses I talked about. And one of the biggest challenges for business owners right now is the need for guidance and support. And I know we're on this, right? But support can come with a very, very hefty price tag, which in this climate is really tough for a lot of businesses. So you may need to know how to pivot your business right now, or how to evolve your business over time, or you might want to know how to get in front of your prospective customers when you can't be face-to-face. There are 1,000,001 different branding and marketing challenges probably in business right now. And you want quick answers and you want guidance from somebody that you can trust. But options are limited. Either that comes at a very hefty price tag, or if your budget is small, you might not be getting the strategic help you really need on your business. So that is why on May the 1st, I'm launching what's called the Start Some Shift Academy. And if we can put up the link to this page, that would be great in the chat area for everybody. Up until now, my services have only been available to my retainer clients and my one-on-one clients, but knowing how many businesses are suffering right now, I want to make my services available at a much lower cost. So I'm launching specifically to what I call the Founding Members Club, which means that you will be the first people to be able to access the academy that I'm launching on May 1st. And this is not an offer to the general public. It is exclusive to Burlington Chamber members, my hand-select people from my community. So I'm not my whole community at this point. As a founding member, here's what the Academy will do. In addition to helping you move from the Land of Ambiguity to Disruptive Cure, what I'm doing is I am introducing, I'm just scrolling down here to get here. What you get from me is you get weekly Zoom calls where you can jump into the hot seat, be laser coached by me on your business right now. Whatever the burning questions are you have about your business, I answer them. Now, if we have a large number of people in the community, what I will be doing is breaking out into what I call pods. So you'll have people no more than 15 per pod, so we can make sure in those weekly Zoom calls, everybody's questions get answered. So you get weekly group coaching calls with me. You get exclusive membership into our private group where you can mastermind and connect with the other members. I will also be running masterclasses once a month. So I personally have spent tens of thousands of dollars being a part of some of the best masterminds in the world. I built incredible connections with best-selling authors and multimillionaires and subject matter experts, and I will be bringing them to the community to talk about subject most right now. And because I'm not launching to the general public, you get access to me, more access than anybody else will get in the future. And as a founding member, you get lifetime access at the price that I'm giving you, which is 30 to 40% less than what I will be launching to the general public with. And you get to keep this pricing for the lifetime that you're in the community. If you leave the community, then you do so at the public price, but as long as you stay in, you keep that pricing. So as I mentioned, you get the weekly group coaching with me, which is about a $650 monthly value. You get a monthly expert masterclasses, which are about a $250 per month value. You get the membership and accountability, which is now founding members rate per month. I also give you an option of buying into a 6-month membership, which will allow you to save $200. You have access to this special pricing until end of day Monday. After this time, the cart will be closed and there will be no opportunity to buy until I go and launch to the general public in a few months from now. If you're struggling and you need help right now, I'm here to help you. I think there is nothing better on the market than this, and I might be slightly biased, but what's really important to me is always the success of my clients. So I'll make big promises, but I guarantee I'll over deliver. So again, the link to this page will be in the comment section if it isn't already. And just don't forget that this will expire very soon, end of day Monday. And there's no risk. The first month alone, you'll be getting 4 coaching sessions for less than $200. So with that, what I would love to do is to jump over to Q&A, ask anybody if you have any questions. I know we've kind of gone over by 5 minutes, but I'm here to answer any questions if people have them.
Thanks, Lara. That was wonderful. Are there any questions from those who are joining us today?
I certainly, sorry, I do. Actually, it's a lot to take in all in one session, right?
Yeah. The good news is we've recorded it on, so for those who want to access this learning opportunity again, we will be making it available to all of our members.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So that was a question. Sorry, my internet has not been tremendously stable and I didn't hear the question. So that.
Yeah, Yvonne was asking about whether or not this would be made available.
Okay, got it.
To take in, there's a lot of learning.
Yeah.
Certainly after Wonder Women and the conference, you know, it was really helpful to go back and reflect and take a bit of time to let this all soak in. So yeah, so we're thrilled that we've been able to record it. We'll make this available as a resource to our members.
Awesome. And I know, you know, when we did the survey, there was a lot of questions. I'm just kind of scanning them right now, but I know there were a lot of challenges that everybody had that they communicated. I asked, what are the 3 biggest challenges that you have right now? And I know a lot of it was around creating awareness right now, creating connections with people when you can't be meeting face to face. So even if you have questions about anything like that, I'm happy to jump on and answer those questions for you. And if not, then we can say this was a great session, and thank you all very much.
Well, it absolutely was a great session. If there are no other questions, I just, you know, in the interest of time, Lara, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. You know, we're so fortunate to have you as part of our community, and we really appreciate you sharing your insights and your expertise. For those of you, again, who participated today, Lara has worked with us to make this very generous offer available to our members who want to take part in the Start Some Shift Academy. So I hope that many of you will take advantage of that opportunity. I think it's a tremendous way right now to add some real value for those who are looking to create that all-important disruptive cure to help you level up your business. So with all of that, Lara, thank you so much again for being here today. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and we'll look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you. Great. Thanks, everyone.